Gryphon Knight Epic comes from the guys over at Cyber Rhino Studios. It's a combination of elements from shoot-em-ups, RPGs, and arcade-like elements into a story that you'd expect from tales of knights of the old, with a bit of fantasy and magic thrown into the mix for good measure. Can the game's subtle charm and gameplay lift it to the heights of the griffin that Sir Oliver rides? Or will the winds of this game and its level design keep it from taking flight for this $13 title? I'll attempt to answer that question, but I want to make sure you guys know that this key was obtained from evolve.pr for the purposes of review. The story begins on the success of Oliver and his companions in rescuing the princess from an evil dragon, and the heroes going on their separate ways after they take the weapons and gold from the dragon's cave. While Oliver only gets a silly little amulet, he gets the princess, so I guess he's the winner in the end. We fast forward 3 years into the future, and the kingdom, well, it's still surprisingly at peace. Oliver, however, hasn't exactly been keeping up his combat figure. Knights in peaceful times don't get a lot of work. But of course, the peace isn't going to last long, as the amulet and the weapons in question are actually cursed, corrupting the former heroes or splitting the evil portions from them. Oliver must now go and save his friends from the corruption and save his kingdom. Blah-biddy blah, blue-biddy blue, fire all the crossbows, you're here for the gameplay. Now, don't get me wrong, the story does have good characterization and makes you want to read up about these characters and who they were, and honestly, the variety of characters thrown in only helps in wanting to know more about them. Now look, the game is a shoot 'em up, so don't expect the world in terms of storytelling here, but I admit, I was pleasantly surprised by the quality here. Now let's start with the core gameplay before anything else. You'll choose a level to fight through, and have 5 lives to get through the level, shooting down everything you can and collecting gold and power-ups, while attempting to, well, not die. And that's not as simple as it sounds. That gold you pick up will allow you to purchase things to make missions easier, such as weapon upgrades or potions, specifically health potions. Don't care about anything else, just the health potions. You'll start with your trusty crossbow, which is your spamming and main weapon, but you'll have secondary weapons which I will allude to later on. You'll get to choose a familiar to fight with as well. Here's a hint, get the health one. Each stage is made up of 2 parts, with a boss at the end of each of those parts, and you'll fight to free an ally from their blight and obtain the weapon that has cursed them at the end of the stage. One unique thing is that you can go different directions with your griffin at the touch of a button, and the game can also have branching paths in the missions. Sometimes you'll need to turn around to take care of enemies or to save yourself from damage. It does add some more strategy at the game's core, which I appreciated, but I felt it could have been used better or more uniquely in the long run. You do, however, need to notice one big difference in gameplay from others in this genre: your hitbox. Your griffin is basically immune to anything, but you, the knight, are not. So the hitbox is specifically the knight. This takes some adjustment as you are on top of your griffin at all times, almost inseparable. Some areas and configurations of enemy fire will make you realize that the knight's long but slender hitbox can be used to dodge enemy attacks, or basically have your ass handed to you because of it. You see, this game is less about shooting. It's an important part to it, but it's more about killing enemies on screen in the right places, and more giving yourself the path to not take damage because of your long and slender hitbox. You can take a lot of damage if you don't take out the right enemies. Now, while you have a health bar, there's a lot of situations where if you don't take out that right enemy that I mentioned, you'll be punished heavily. Health potions will be your friend in this game, that's for sure. At least they were for me. The game will feel a bit different from others in the genre, with its progression and different type of playstyle, but you won't feel completely out of your element for those who play shoot-em-ups on a normal basis. One of the most critical portions about this game, however, is your secondary weapon and its magic meter. Now, this may be a shoot-em-up, but you'll find that the game takes heavy influence from Mega Man of all things. I mean, after every boss, you take their weapon, and well, just look at this screen. Don't tell me that you don't get Mega Man vibes from it. It borrows a couple of concepts from the Mega Man series, in fact, but more on that later. These weapons are very key in dealing with situations and switching back and forth between them to take care of different enemies rather easily. Weapons like the sword's close range and shield-like damage will be essential in protecting yourself while dealing with a group of enemies. On the flip side, the bow is good for long-range precision and keeping your health safe at a distance. Knowing what weapon is best for each situation is key, and can make situations that were once hard a lot easier. Very similar to, of course, the Mega Man series. Some secondary weapons may seem useless at first, but in the right situation, they may show their greatest strength. And some you may not use at all because of your playstyle. Now, despite some repetition and enemy reuse, the enemies and firing patterns do reasonably mix up gameplay in their combinations, and this is probably one of the strongest elements in the game. While level layouts may be similar, different enemies and tactics will be thrown at you, and when the game shines is when you use your weapons and your abilities to really maximize your combat effectiveness on screen. These two combinations of the enemies and weapons are the highlight of Gryphon Knight Epic by a far margin, and will be why you'd want to play this game on repeated attempts. Level design, however, is something that could have used improvement in Gryphon Knight Epic, and in more ways than one. You'll notice that stages end up feeling very similar to each other. In fact, this cliff face will show up in a different form on a lot of the stages. Now, while there's a level or two that have unique mechanics or feel completely different from the others, most of them blend together in some way or another, so I felt this could have been improved in some way. Not only that, enemy placement and times led the gameplay in which it was clear to me you needed to know what was happening before it happened, or you'd take some damage. Part of this is how slow you move. Natural reaction times may not work due to how slow your character moves in relation to some of the projectiles and enemies that he has to deal with. You almost have to have a step up on them in terms of knowledge in order to get through unharmed, and that's something that, while helpful, shouldn't be mandatory like I felt it was at times. Now, bosses can be difficult, especially in figuring out what the game wants you to do on some of them, as you'll have to learn what the boss does specifically in order to avoid his hits, and there's usually not a lot of time to react to them, so you'll need to know. This can frustrate a tiny bit, but luckily, mid-level bosses, once completed, will allow on the level select screen to skip to the next section, which was a little bit of a relief. You'll lose a majority of your lives during these boss encounters. After you collect all the weapons and all the levels of the game after freeing all your friends, you'll find yourself taking on your mirror form. But first, you must unlock the temple, and then, like the Mega Man games before it that influenced this game, look, boss rushes can work, they really can in a game like this. The idea here is to present the player how far they've come, and how better they have gotten up to this point, with all the skills and abilities they have gained. Do it all in one life? Okay, that's hard, but you've got potions, so you should be able to do it, right? It's one of those situations where I wonder if the boss rush right before the final boss was a good idea in this case. A lot of the bosses are the harder ones at this point, and while you've learned something, you do have to put new tactics into play, especially if you don't want to waste your time in terms of one of these boss fights, the puzzle one in particular. As to the art style, some people will like it and some people will say, it looks alright. I will say this, I definitely enjoyed it. It definitely brings the feeling of a castle-like landscape and the lands that you are going to on a regular basis. And while it won't be taking any awards in art design, it complements the gameplay in every way, and has reasonable designs all around. The presentation overall focuses on function rather than style, which I do appreciate. Music and sound design are average all around, nothing that fully stands out, but nothing that negatively stands out either. I enjoyed the presentation overall, and it's part of what drove me to look at the game to begin with, considering the subject matter. Specifically, I did like a lot of the mid-level boss designs more than anything else, as they stood out in terms of character design because of their size and just different nature to them. Overall in Gryphon Knight Epic, I felt the game to be a combination of hit and miss elements. For every strength with weaponry and challenge the game's enemy variety and firing through at you, the game dragged itself down with poor designs on level design and game design decisions. The game's charm in its story and its aesthetic doesn't do enough for me to move it to a level of must-play, but puts it solidly up there as an enjoyable experience. It's a game that's inconsistent, a game that has elements of great things in it, but is held back. In terms of a score, I give Gryphon Knight Epic a 6.5 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, it's good. It's definitely worth a look at a different game in the genre than most. But at the full price of $13, there are other experiences out there that beat it in terms of pure mechanics and joy, like Roche Fusion. It's a game that usually I would recommend people to generally pick up on sale, as its good elements will bring fun no matter what. but it may not be something to just run out and rush to pick up. But for those who are looking for an experience like a shoot 'em up, it definitely will fill that void. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll leave my Steam review in the description below, and vote it up or vote it down depending on whether or not you like these first impressions. Again, like and share this video if you so desire, and again, I always take feedback, so I'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks again for watching, and again, keep on gaming. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left hand side as well. And if you've missed my last video, take a look at the right hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.